Hello everyone, this is Terry Mitchell with the Voice on Fire interview series, Interviews with Intention. If you've not followed along before, I really like to interview people that are what I consider to be change agents. They're difference makers, action takers, people that are making a difference either locally in their own communities or even somewhere around our global village. And today's guest is no different. I'd love to introduce you to Gauri, and we're going to be having a conversation about all sorts of amazing things. And Gauri, what I'd really like to focus on is that key word that you shared when I first reached out to you, the Possibilitarian. Thank you for joining me on Voice on Fire.
Thank you so much, Terry. I really love the way you have created the whole thing, and it's super creative. Thank you so much for having me here.
Absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. So share with our audience today what it is you do, and we'll also talk about who you do it for and why. But let's start focusing on that amazing word, Possibilitarian, what it is that you do. Share with us.
Yeah, but before responding to this, I would like to ask a question to you, Terry. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, please tell me what is 1 plus 1?
Oh, I really love these trick questions. I have to say it's 2, but I'm sure there's a better answer.
So nothing better, nothing good or bad, but if you take one chewing gum and you add another, you get one as 1. So 1 plus 1 becomes 1.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing, you and I, we are now connected, and we are not going to just end with this interview series. We are going to connect a lot later on. Also, we are going to collaborate with each other. And you 1 and I 1 would become infinite. It would not be restricted to 2. Right? In binary system, 1 and 1 is 1, 0. So the obvious answer for anything, any situation in life, which is called as is, it's always only one thing. Mm-hmm. But when you start looking at could be, when you start looking at what more can happen, you create more and more possibilities. Mm-hmm. So 1 plus 1 is 2, but 1 plus 1 could be 10, it could be 1 and 1 infinite, it could be 1 and 1, 1, it can be anything. So this thought process is called as possibilitarian thinking.
I really like that. I like the way that it encompasses the possibility of what things can become if you ask what could be. I mean, that really just makes a lot of sense. What got you started along that pathway and coming up with such an amazing word?
So for me, the whole life is all about creating possibilities, because if I take you to my childhood, I started my journey from a small village. It did not have any English medium schools, so I studied in vernacular medium, no extracurricular activities, and I was a very timid child. So any guest at home, I'll just run behind my mom and I will just hide there because I had no courage to speak to anyone. When I went to college and I did engineering, so when I went to engineering college, the challenge was not academics because I was academically inclined, but the challenge was communication. This college had people from all across globe, so English is what everybody would use to communicate. And here I am. I would not even say yes, madam, to the roll call of teacher. I will just raise my hand because I thought I am not good for anything. I am not enough. I can't speak in front of these people. I don't belong to this place. From there on, my father always continued to guide me that try again and you will succeed. And my mother gave me the values of respect for self and others. Mm-hmm. With these things and the dreams in my heart, I continue to work on that. And today, we are connecting. Today, I am a global speaker. I have spoken for TEDx also. So this is how you create possibilities in your life. And I'm giving this information, sharing this thought process with others. So they are also creating multiple possibilities in their lives. Mm. And that's why it's all about being a possibilitarian.
Absolutely. So not only are you a possibilitarian within your own life, but you make sure through the various ways that you connect with others, you're also a possibilitarian for them and helping them to then, it becomes almost like not only just the ripple effect in the pond, but also it's a way of creating also, I suppose, as you mentioned a little bit earlier, infinitum. It goes on and it goes on and it goes on. No reason to stop.
Absolutely, yes. So you don't restrict it to yourself because there are so many people in such situations who come from not so large cities, who do not come from a very good background, but they also have to make a mark for themselves. And in any situation, we have to remember that there are more than one solution, just like 1+1. So let's look at possibilities and not limitations.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really, it's obvious, and it would make to seem like common sense, but unless it's sort of something that becomes part of your way of thinking and encouraged as your way of thinking through the people around you, it can be very easy not to feel that there are possibilities. And sometimes we just need those people around us, like people like yourself, to prompt us to think, wow, you know, I might have had not a very good upbringing, I might have missed opportunities, but here I am now. This is the moment now. What can I do to create a possibility, an option, a way forward, a different way of thinking? So yes, it makes a lot of sense what you're saying. So in terms of what you do, I know that you've been well awarded for a lot of different things. You're very highly regarded in the human resources or HR industry. Share a little bit with the audience about that.
Yeah, so HR is my day's job, and that's my passion also. I love connecting with people, and that's how I came into this profession. Basically, like I said, I am an engineer. So again, that was also creating a possibilities, learning those technical things, and then being in HR, connecting with people and doing stuff like that was also not looking at limitations that as an engineer you could do only this. So and I love because it's not only connect with people, it's transforming lives when you are in HR, because you have so much sharing. There are so much possibilities for sharing your thought process, enabling them to do certain things, because that's the role of HR. You enable leaders to take care of their teams, you enable people to have their best, achieve their best potential. So it's all about creating more and more possibilities when you are in HR, and that's how I love being there. That is one thing. Second, women empowerment is another thing which I really love, because you might be aware in India, the ratios, wherever you look at diversity ratios, and more so, inclusion is very, very less. We have only close to 7% of women when it comes to boards or CXO levels, but things are not so good, which can always be improved. So that is another thing. I am running a circle which is called as Leaders Lifting Leaders. It's a lean-in circle for women. And we call it Leaders Lifting Leaders because I believe that all of us are leaders, because we impact at least one life. We impact ourselves for sure. So all of us are self-leader. And I think when you make an impact on any life, you become a leader. So Leaders Lifting Leaders was born last year, and we are around 127 women coming together, helping each other achieve our goals, move forward in our careers. So that's second thing. Third is I love networking, and that's where I am part of Navi Mumbai LinkedIn Local. That's an offline LinkedIn. You connect with people, you know them more than their profile, which you see on LinkedIn. Like you and I are connecting today, and we will know much more about ourselves. I love sharing my thoughts, and that's why I'm part of Professional Speakers Associations of India. And here again, it's a networking platform for professional speakers. We come together, we learn from each other, we share our learnings and mentor each other. So that's how these are some of the things that I am doing. And besides that, mentoring students, startups, and young professionals is what I'm also doing.
Excellent, excellent. So something that was of interest in amongst all of those amazing things is that you have created this circle, the Lean In Circle, which is really, as you say, leaders lifting leaders. What was it in terms of you wanted to obviously empower women for a lot of very important reasons that you mentioned? What's really the driving force? What do you see that as becoming in terms of when you've started something? If you're like me, you start it without really thinking about how it's going to evolve, and it just really blossoms on its own. And so you sort of almost follow this thing you've created. How is it for you? What's the sort of future vision of your Lean In Circle?
Yeah, so it started because I realized women are not good at networking. and they find it very difficult to talk about themselves. They are unable to differentiate between boasting and branding.
Okay.
Anything that you talk about yourself, and especially in India, women are always told that you got to be humble, you always should not be talking about yourself, but you should give all the credit to others. So that's how the value system is, and women find it even more difficult. So the main agenda which with I started it was branding, because like I said, women are not good at it, and it's important that you have your own visibility. That's critical in today's time. Second was shared learning, experiential learning. So we come together, we share our own thought process. It's not that the group consists of only HR professionals, it's a diverse group, and we have people from 5 years of experience till 35 years of experience. So we mentor each other. That was another thing. So having a platform where people can come together and they can share their thought processes, because a safe environment where you share your something which is directly coming from your heart, that is what I wanted to create. So that was the most important agenda, and it is going on very well. The future vision is to have even more women and do more learning programs for them. Like mentoring, we did one session, but we want to do more and more about it. We are now creating a coffee table book for it. There's someone in the team who is doing it for us, because we just celebrated our first year anniversary. So she's creating that. And more women should come together so that we help each other and we learn from the diverse background.
That's an awesome project. I really like the idea that there is, it sounds a little bit similar to my own experience in terms that something has evolved. You've got the great idea, you feel passionate about it, you start implementing it, and after a while it almost grows itself into its own thing, its own entity, and it just becomes more of its own thing. And I can hear from what you're saying, it sounds like it's really empowering a lot of women. But not only that, you have a coffee table book. I think that sounds fantastic.
Yeah, and we had a video also. So many women are super creative, but they are not in the profession where they can utilize these skills. Say someone who created our video, and I'll share the link with you. You will really love it. She is in a profession of training. So she does not have any avenues where she will be doing a video, but here she has done a brilliant job. And likewise, this other woman who is helping us with coffee table book. So many people are utilizing their skills. Now so many people know about them. So branding in right sense, and more learning also. Like somebody is going to conduct a session on Canva. Now we know Canva is very important today, and you must know it. So you have an expert in house. She's going to conduct a training that would be for members only. So it is going to be a free training session. You can ask anything because it's a safe environment as well. So it would be a do it along training, and that's how the group learns and they get empowered. And things go, like you rightly said, on its own.
Yeah. I think it's so important that things do feel safe. It's a lot of the time, and I still recall throughout even my high school years that nobody that felt unsafe in themselves would answer a question if the teacher asks someone to put their hand up and say, okay, who knows the answer to this? You wouldn't see anyone put their hands up if they were unsure of themselves. They would look around the room. And you would think, I knew they knew the answers. And I just always felt how sad it is that we doubt ourselves or we don't feel safe. So creating safe space and reminding us that it's okay to speak up and to say things and to be acknowledged. As you say, recognizing our own worth for our own brand. I like the way you think of it in terms of branding ourselves or standing out. I think that's a great thing. So in terms of what you do, it sounds like you have got an incredibly broad, I suppose, range of skills that you apply, but also a lot of passionate interests. So who do you do it for? And it sounds like we've sort of covered off some of this, but let's explore that a little bit more.
Yeah, so this particular piece of women, it's for everyone. And say, for example, I was LinkedIn Person of the Year last year. So I share my knowledge with people. It can be anyone. And even in mentoring also, sometimes people would reach out to me and ask, they want to upgrade their knowledge, which course they should join. Or it can be a long-term assignment also, like I am now mentoring an engineering student who comes from not so privileged background. So she is good in academics, she has reached there, but now she needs to know how can she take it forward, how can she do well in corporate, or if she wants to start something on her own. Then there are startups whom I am mentoring. So when it comes to startups, most of the times the founders would become HR and they will be running the show at least till a certain threshold is reached in terms of revenue or in terms of turnover or number of employees. So they need to understand how things would work out when it comes to HR. So I guide them there. Then, in terms of LinkedIn knowledge sharing, how you can have a good LinkedIn profile, how you can write good content, all those things also I share my knowledge with. So my target audience is kind of young professionals, women, and senior leaders. So this is what I share my knowledge with.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds also that you've mentioned that you are a TEDx speaker, which congratulations, it's always a great achievement. In terms of how did you find that by achieving that milestone, how has that helped with what you also now do in terms of the leadership, the mentoring, and running the Lean In Circle, etc.? How has that TEDx experience contributed or helped with what you now do?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for your wishes. Yes, it's an amazing milestone, and I really love the overall process. So, the first thing that I learned from there, and it is now helping me, is to speak concisely. So, in 18 minutes, you have to talk about whatever you want to share, and it must make some impact. So, talking about things in as many lesser words possible was number one thing. Second, when you go through the whole process, the manuscript, the learning piece of it, the efforts that you put in, it gives you a insight that nothing comes easy and you have to put in a lot of efforts to reach there if you really want to be a TEDx speaker. So with this knowledge, whosoever wants to apply, I guide them as well that this is how you can do it to make it possible for TEDx. That is also helping me everywhere. And then the kind of confidence that you get once you reach on such sort of platforms, it gives something from within which you don't know what it is, but you know how you can do things better now, or how is it possible to do anything.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you've really highlighted an important point. It's sometimes when we step out of our comfort zone and we do something that we know we sort of know that we could do it, but we're almost a little too scared to do it. And so we sort of hesitate and we don't do it for a little while. But once we take that step and show ourselves that we've got faith in ourselves, that we trust in ourselves, and then we have a successful outcome because we did it and people either applauded or they commented or they told us how great it was. And we know that we've touched a life, which is something you mentioned earlier about, just affecting one person's life is about leadership. It does. It helps you to evolve into a person that you didn't know that you could become. And you realize you discover more about yourself, which then becomes to other people who aren't in that position something that they aspire to. So yes, it does lead to a lot of ways that you can emerge as a more fulfilled person within yourself. Would you say that's been the case for you?
Yeah, you put it brilliantly, Terry, because this thing going beyond your comfort zone, the kind of confidence it gives you. And like you said, we all know we can do it, but there's some doubt there. Like I said, my childhood story where I would think that I'm not good enough and I can't make it. And when I did it, I knew that I would be able to do 4 more things now. So likewise here also going through all that process, the filtering, and then finally making it. And the best thing that you said, impacting even one life. So I received multiple comments from people that this particular aspect of your talk impacted me. I changed my way of doing things like this, and that was the real reward for me. So at least one person is changing, I'm glad about it, because I also learned from someone, and that's how I progressed. And now if I am able to do it, is also paying it forward. So it's yes, definitely, you rightly said.
Yeah, I love that term. Paying it forward has been something that's become part of my way of seeing the world for quite some time. And I know that it warms my heart. I know that if I have been able to do something to help somebody, and I know that I'm doing it without any idea of expectation of any sort of payback. How can I help you? How can I pay you back for what you've done for me? I've never ever asked for that. For me, it's always, here's what I'd like you to do. Do something for someone going forward. Be that person that you sought me out to be. So become that person and do it for somebody else. And it just to see the ripple effect really is it's heartwarming, and it's something that kind of gives you a little feeling of being proud, because you know that you've helped somebody, but you also know they're going to go on and help somebody else. Is that what you've experienced?
Yes, absolutely. So when people say, even this LinkedIn journey, when I started it after my master's in psychology, and I brought in my personal experiences, how things changed for me. So when I started writing, after a few posts, somebody would text, somebody would write in the inbox that this post, this is what I have learned. Somebody said that I have posted because I had mentioned about some infographic, and they posted it on their study table, and every day they are looking at it. Somebody else started implementing something with their team because I had written something about it. So all of this information is with everyone, like you rightly said, we all know about it, but it's kind of constant reminder, and the examples that come along with it, my own perspective which would come along with a particular thought, would help you get a solution. So if you can give a solution to someone, nothing better than that. And I fully agree, and you explained it in a very beautiful way, that if you can change even one person's way of thinking, or one person's problem, if you can solve, you feel that feeling of happiness, pride, and you think that you have done your part.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I totally agree. I think it's something that I'd like to see more of the world embrace and do more of, is to be on a mission to do something that makes the world a brighter place for one other person, but to do it in such a way as you know that it'll have that ripple effect and carry forward. And I think if we can all embrace that, especially during the current times that our world is in, I think we'd be onto a really important breakthrough in human development. I think that's just certainly something I feel. So in terms of what you do, you certainly encompass a lot of different activities, and there's a lot of things that you do for empowering others, which is fantastic. And we sort of know a little bit about who you do it for, because there's so many people that you do it for, perhaps unintentionally, but you certainly have your target market. Although I'm sure there are a lot of people that would certainly benefit from the way that you approach everything with this possibilitarian mindset. I'd like to ask the last question that we sort of like to kind of wrap up a little bit, but let's explore it first. We know who you do it for, but why do you do it? What's your the inspiration or the reason behind why you do what you do?
Yeah, very good question, because unless there's a purpose, things would not last for a very long time. So for me, the purpose is to help people who would have seen situation like me, and it can be anyone. Earlier I used to think that as you grow up the corporate ladder, or if you become an entrepreneur, you don't have those fear of failure, fear of shame, you don't have that. But now I know it's with everyone, it's uniform across the world, it's kind of being human, it's part of being human. Yeah. So there are people who are struggling with this particular thing within their own lives, and they think that they would not be able to make it. That is one side of it. Second side of it is, I have seen, and that's where there is a good correlation, and I can step in and I can help those people. Now, second step is when you are at some level, but you have to move forward, because when people reach middle management, they become stagnant because they are not able to make that transition. And as it is said, what has brought you here would not take you there. You have to do something more to reach there. So that's something more I did in my life, and I can share my thought process on that. So these are two purposes, and third is definitely for women and girl child, because I have seen those challenges in India. I was fortunate enough to have parents who supported me, who helped me with all the education, and they are always with me. But there are so many women around who don't get family support, and they don't have anyone to speak to, they don't have anyone to get guidance from. So since I have seen this situation, I want to become a change agent. I want to become somebody who is ready to listen. Listening also is important sometimes, because people have their solutions, they just want to vent it out. So that's one. And then when they want to be guided, so more of a coaching rather than mentoring someone, giving them solutions, asking right questions help people much more. So these are three different purposes because of which I want to support people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's just so important, and you hit on a really important note. A lot of the time we have our own answers, but we sometimes, because of that little doubting voice, and because we can't always make the thoughts really clear in our own head, it's not until we speak them out and we know that somebody is listening that we actually start to hear the answers coming through, and we start to identify, oh, that feels like the better option. That sounded right to me, even though we didn't think it in our heads. It felt and seemed and it appeared to be correct after we spoke it out. And I found my own experiences with people that I've helped, once they start speaking it out and you listen, you let them share what's going on, they know the answers most of the time anyway. So it's really, I think a lot of the time people need to be encouraged, they need to be supported, they need to be reminded of their worth, they need to be reminded that they count and that they have value. Are you finding that?
Yes, absolutely. Lot many times it happens, and then they come back and say, yes, this reinforced with what you said, or what example you cited, it's connecting very well with my situation. And this is the decision I have taken, and I'm glad I took that decision. But things do not stop there, because life is full of failures and success, mistakes and doing good. So the thought process that I have taken a goal, and I will die for this goal. Now, this has to change, because we know it's emotional intelligence to know where to stop. So even that, sometimes you will tell people that if this is not going well, you can look for something else. Sometimes people are just stuck with one goal, because since childhood we have been told, be there for the goal, don't have plan B, so that you can achieve your plan A. But life is not that plan A or plan B. There are 1,000 plans which life has for us. So even that helps sometimes, that you can guide them something different, because generally they would listen from others that you will have to achieve this goal since you have made your goal, you have invested that much. But I would ask them that even if you have invested that much, do you think more investment is required, or you can make something out of this situation? Again, the possibility thinking. So this is how, it helps me to guide others, because I have also been in multiple such situations. All of us have our own stories, and we know how things work in life.
Absolutely. Certainly in a career path. I mean, I've met so many people over my many years on this planet that have started out because perhaps of parental pressure, perhaps of peer group pressure, perhaps just society's pressure, that they've pursued certain career goals, whether it be climbing the corporate ladder, or perhaps they've become a doctor, or they've become a lawyer, or they've become a scientist, and they've had to spend a lot of years and a lot of money investing in that pathway. And at the end of it, a lot of them are really unfulfilled, and they don't want to be that end result. But they feel stuck there because they've invested that money, they've spent the time, they've become this, official expert according to this document that they've come from the university, says that they've achieved this amazing thing, or whatever achievement they've made. They don't seem to realize, perhaps in if they were to have a conversation with you, they might realize you do have 1,000 possibilities. Maybe there's something that you can do with what you already know. And I know in my own experience, I have a very mixed and very Oh, what's a nice way to say I've changed jobs a lot. So over the years, I've had many different jobs, but they started out with one clear sense of pressure from my family, because my mother, and I am proud of her for having the thought, for saying to us children, you must all have at least a trade qualification, if nothing else. Because at least if you have a trade, you can do something with that. Now, mine was in cooking. I gained my certificate in cooking, so that was fine. That was the trade certificate at the time. And I'm thankful for that all these years later, and that's almost 40 years later, because my food intake, my nutrition intake, my awareness of food preparation has stood me in good stead. Now, I changed and I followed a pathway that I became a psychiatric nurse, and I spent years in university to become that nurse, but I couldn't sustain myself in that particular line of work. But I never lost the values that I claimed from that, because there was the study of psychology and the study of sociology and the study of mental well-being. So that's such an all-encompassing career path, and it has stood me in good stead. So there are always possibilities, and you're not compelled to stay in the one line of work. How does that resonate with where you are at with being the possibilitarian?
Yeah, so I must say, rather, you are a possibilitarian the way you shared your story, because you are not looking at limitations. And beautifully, you describe that the information that you learned from a particular degree in your college years, you are now utilizing it in your food intake and your nutrition, everything. And likewise, this information, the second part of it also. So you are combining everything and then putting up the best foot forward. And why is it possible? Because you don't think that that has become your limitation, that degree has become your limitation. You are free to do anything and utilize all the knowledge. And this is where world is moving, right? We are not looking at now experience that a person has, but the capability to adapt. And that's where adaptability has become top 5 skills.
Yeah.
So it totally is in sync with a possibilitarian attitude.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as you say, we're in a set of circumstances right now where being able to adapt, and that the word that I hear a lot at this stage because of COVID is the word pivot. So we start doing one thing, COVID comes along, suddenly we've got to do something else in order to, I suppose, manage the situation as best as we can. And I hear a lot of people saying they hate the word pivot, because I suppose it reflects a set of pressures that they feel from what the COVID experience has put upon them. But at the end of it, I think we really have learned, I hope so many more people have learned, that we're not stuck in one way of doing things. There are always ways to think, see, feel, do, be something different. It takes a lot of courage, though, wouldn't you think?
Yes, absolutely. Because it's very easy to go one way and follow the traditional path. But now, when you follow the traditional path, I call it mental models.
Mm-hmm.
So, say for example, you are a psychologist, and like there is a joke, right? Chicken crossed the road, and why did chicken cross the road? So when you ask a psychologist, they would say neurons fired. When you ask, say, Newton, the answer would be that it's third law of motion, and that's where the chicken was in motion and it continued to move to the other side. You asked a motivational speaker, they will say that chicken wanted to get motivated and there was a session going on, and that's why chicken crossed the road. So there are so many possibilities for why chicken crossed the road. So in our lives, it has to always happen. But it's not easy, you rightly pointed. When you move from one thing to another, like when I moved from engineering to HR, I was told you spoiled your 4 years, you wasted all your money, your time, your efforts, and now you are in HR, you are not using it. But that's not true, because like you pointed that whatever learnings you had, you are utilizing it here. Now today, HR is all about analytics, data, having that digital mindset. And when I learned those things for 4-year long course, I have them and I'm utilizing them in my HR practices. So it is never wasted, but it's difficult to explain it to people. And that's where I have stopped kind of caring about what everybody's saying, because the moment you start changing anything, the first response would be negative.
Yeah.
And that can bring you down if you pay too much attention to it. So I always say to whosoever I meet that feedback should always be filtered, because the other person may not have those mental models. They may be a Newton who is thinking only because of that law, third law of motion, chicken is moving. They may be somebody and they know only that much. But once you start moving out of your comfort zone, once you start creating more and more stories in your head, you can connect with everything. And that's where the change comes in. Unless you have that acceptance, change would not come.
Yeah.
So don't put too much attention to people's feedback, because basically it's going to be negative, since they don't have that mental model. Nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
They don't even know that this is possible, then they will come out with negative consequences only.
We do tend to focus a little too much, I find, and I myself have been guilty of it over the years, of taking on board and believing in what other people say about my capabilities, or what my story is about, and what I should be doing, and what is wrong with what I'm doing. And if I were to believe them, I honestly would be doing absolutely very little, and probably still stuck in a career that made me incredibly unhappy. And I would have just done that because I would have been too scared to step outside of that if I listened to what other people who meant well, there are many of them who meant well, because they themselves lived with their own belief systems about what was right and wrong. And if I had listened to them, I would not have emerged with my own belief systems and my own understandings of my own capabilities. So I think it's really important, just certainly from my experience, I find this, that we need to respect that other people have their opinions. They have their opinions based on their experiences. They haven't lived in our personal, specific life situation. So they see it, but they don't feel it, know it, or understand it. Even though they may want to, they still won't be able to, because they haven't lived it. So we need to respect that, okay, you've had a different set of circumstances, and so have you over there, and so have you over there, but your circumstances are all different to what mine are. And thank you for caring about my situation, but let me emerge as my own person. I think we really could benefit from taking a more courageous leap into our own faith.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's what I call as self-leadership. That rely on your own self, focus on your inner locus of control. Whatever is beyond your control, you can't do anything about it. But whatever is within your control, do full focus on that, and don't listen to any distractions. And you put it brilliantly once again, that respectfully tell them, politely say them, okay, I agree with whatever you are saying, but I'm not going to follow it, or I disagree and I would not follow it. But everything should be very polite, and we should not be disrespecting people, but within our hand we should be courageous enough, strong enough to know what actions we want to take.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of really sage advice that we've discussed today, and I really hope that the listeners gain something really positive from this, to believe in themselves, have the courage to trust in their own capabilities, and to really become the possibilitarians in their own lives. And I think that you set a really great example, and certainly spell out how that's possible. So I think I love the fact that we have a new word to play with, and I hope people will take it on board. I'd really like to ask you one significant question, but first off, before we get there, share with the audience, and these details will be in the description for the YouTube channel and for the podcast. But Gauri, share with us the links where people can find you if they wanted to reach out to you.
Sure. So it would be LinkedIn, Facebook, and yeah, I am reachable. So do you want me to type it in the text box?
No, that's fine. What I will do is I will obtain that information from you, and I will put it into the description, so that if anyone watches this video and afterwards wants to know a little bit more information, they'll be able to scroll down to the description and they'll find all the links about you and be able to follow you further from there.
Sure, that would be great.
Fantastic. So I'll share with us is the last big question I want to ask you. What is your one big wish for humanity?
Yeah, one wish, yeah, the very good question. I want trafficking to be stopped. And especially in India, we hear about child trafficking, women being trafficked, and that should be stopped because everybody should have the right to live the way they want to. Nobody should be confined because we know how difficult it is to leave away everything, and it's by force. Nobody is doing it by choice. So children have no future. Women are not empowered to do anything. Even at home, sometimes they are not treated with. So those kind of things should be done away with. A world should be full of peace, full of freedom for everyone, where everyone can achieve their maximum potential. This is what my wish.
Yeah, absolutely. If we all tapped into the capacity for everyone to recognize their own inner strength and the level of contribution that they could make, we'd live in quite an amazing and very different world to what we live in right at the moment.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you today, Gauri. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and your wisdom, and for being the first Possibilitarian that I've interviewed. I think you've opened the world for a great conversation for many people who watch this at a later time, and there'll be a lot of people who'll be thinking what possibilities that they really do have in their life. Thank you so much for sharing. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much, Terry, for having me here. And I really love to know you are a possibilitarian. So I have a company now. Thank you so much.
Lovely. All right. Thank you. You're watching or listening to Voice on Fire interviews with intention. If you're new to Voice on Fire interviews, you'll hear from everyday amazing people on a mission to make a difference. These people are change agents, action takers, and difference makers, having a positive impact on their local community or across our global village. Don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell for updates on new interviews. I hope you enjoy.